Friends of Aikido Italia Network, welcome and happy Sunday to you all. This is Simone Chiarchini. You're watching the third session of the Aiki Healings. These are our online meetings aiming at bringing about good, positive energy in these uncertain times. Today, our guest is Rionne McAvoy. Hi, Rionne. How are you doing?
Hey, hello. This is really exciting. Thank you for having me.
I'm very pleased to have you. For a while now, we've been chatting over the net. We've been talking about Budo, Aikido, and many other things that we cannot say here in public.
Yes.
Finally, we connected. No, it was quite natural to bring our conversation here and to share some of Rionne's views with you. And I think first thing to do to help those that are not familiar with Rionne's path in martial arts, it may be a good idea to start from the beginning. So maybe Rionne,
okay.
Say, if you want to tell us a couple of words about your early years in Australia. Personally, by reading your article, Isatsu no Shunkan, it was easy enough to see for me how your father's figure was essential in directing you towards martial arts, and of course towards a certain concept of martial arts as a form of combat. Can you tell us something about him and how you experienced your approach to Budo through him?
Yeah, okay. So my father was born during World War II, and he didn't meet his father until I think he was around 2 years old. So his father came back from the war, and in those times, in all throughout Europe, I think men were different, and you had to be tough as nails. And especially him growing up poor, no food, right after the war, you know, in the 50s and then into the 60s in England, it was kind of a, you know, the strongest survive in his early days. And he decided that he wanted to leave England, and he immigrated to Australia as what they called a 10-pound pom, which was a one-way ticket for 10 pounds, no return. You know, cut a long story short, he, you know, having done Taekwondo for a little bit, I came along, and I was about 8 years old when I went on a school trip. I wrote this in the article, and you know, the Isatsu no Shunkan, and I very stupidly said to a much larger boy, I think I was 8 and he was 12, and I said, "You're fat." And he took one look at me, didn't think twice, didn't hesitate, and just, I had a massive big eye out here. I was 8 years old, and my father wasn't angry that I got in a fight. He wasn't angry that I got hurt. He was angry that I didn't fight back. And I said, but Papa, he's so much bigger than me, and he's older than me. And he just said, right, well, we're going to put you in Taekwondo, because that's what he had done. Right. So we went down to the local Taekwondo club, which was in a high school near my house. And I very quickly went from, you know, an 8-year-old scared little boy to a 12, 13-year-old in the Australian junior team for Taekwondo. He had me kicking the bag, the heavy bag, an adult's heavy bag, for 2 hours a day. There was no such thing as school homework. Homework came after training. We would get home, he would have fruit on the table ready to go. And it was kicking the bag. He'd come home from work and he'd watch me. Every now and then he'd peep out the window. And just the sight of him looking at me, making sure I was kicking and punching the bag was, enough to scare the hell out of me. When I was doing Taekwondo, there was a woman there also from England who was doing it, Taekwondo, and they got talking because they were both English, and her husband, Australian guy, was doing Aikido. And he said, you know what, I wouldn't mind doing Aikido. So that was how he started his path to Aikido, and kind of how I started mine, because I used to have to go down there. And to be honest, it bored the hell out of me when I was a child watching these adults do Aikido. It was so boring because I love to kick and punch, and as all the kids doing, watching Jean-Claude Van Damme and all those action stars of the 80s and 90s. But definitely he's making, he would also hold the pads for me when I was a child to make sure that my roundhouse kicks were good and punches and that were pretty good. I was getting really, really good at Taekwondo, got like second dan as a 13-year-old. They told me, 2 more years, and when the Olympics accepts Taekwondo, if you're old enough, you may be good enough. You may not be old enough. We're not sure, but you're definitely on the path to being in this Olympic team. We had this junior team, it was like a special, like generational team, they called it, where all the kids would, they'd pick out the ones for the future and try and train them in the anticipation that Taekwondo made the Olympics. He ended up making the Olympics, but I never got to see that because as soon as he found out that there was a whole Olympic talk, he pulled me out and put me into karate as a 14-year-old. So you can imagine, like, bit of a swollen head. I was winning a lot of tournaments as a kid, black belt, and he puts me back into karate as a white belt. Had to start all over again. But it was a good path, and to cut a long story short, I ended up quitting that dojo, that karate dojo. And the only reason I went back, I quit when I was 17, and I went back when I was 19 because this old chat program, I don't know if you remember, it was called ICQ. Ever heard of that? I found my karate sensei's daughter on ICQ, and I had a massive crush on her when I was a boy. I started chatting to her on ICQ, and she said, why don't you come down to the dojo? And I only went down to the dojo to see her, 19 years old, thinking, and without knowing what happened, her mother had signed me up to enter the dojo again as a 19-year-old. I ended up winning my state championships as an orange belt at 19. And that was when I decided to take my first trip to Japan.
Yeah,
and that was
my next question. So when that was in 2001, I think, yeah?
Yes.
You had your first stint in Japan, and clearly from what you just described, your idea of martial arts was dominated by the concept of fighting, competitions. Anyway, everything was going through punching and kicking.
Right.
Nevertheless, you ended up enrolling at the Aikikai Hombu Dojo. We now know that this first experience you had at the Hombu Dojo was far from satisfactory, and you gave it up soon enough. That said, it's quite obvious.
Well, what happened was, as I was growing up, doing my kicking and punching, my father was also going through all the Q grades and Shodan and Nidan of Aikido. And in Australia, we have, a lot of people, it's quite common to have a large swimming pool. So I was his uke in the swimming pool in the Australian summer. So he'd do his entire Aikido tests on me in the pool. I mean, I vividly remember them, kick me as hard as you can. Come on, punch me. Come on, punch me. And he'd do all his Aikido gradings in the swimming pool. I vividly remember, this kind of stuff. But I did come to Japan for karate. And although it didn't work out, I did end up joining Hombu. And I'll never forget, I went down to my very first class in Hombu. I'd never done any Aikido in any other country, except for my dad in the swimming pool. And this little old lady, I'll never forget, she would have been like 65, 70. And I was a skinny little 19-year-old boy. And she puts this Nikkei on me. And I was like, ow. I was like, what are you doing? I was trying to tell them all. I was like, I didn't speak any Japanese. And I looked up in the dictionary, okay, how do you say like first time? right? And I looked at the one and it said Ichiban, and Ichiban means number one, like you're the best. And I said to the sensei, I wanted to say to the sensei, this is my first time, but I said to him, Ichiban, you're the best. And he just looked at me and smiled. But you know, at Hombu Dojo, there's not a whole lot of teaching going on. It's very old style Japanese where you look and copy. When you need information, you get it from your senpai after class or, you know, quietly during class. There's not a whole lot of instruction. And so this whole, you know, being a white belt in Hombu, it wasn't for me. And I quickly, after about a month, I quit and just went back to my partying ways until I went back to Australia. That's where I started Aikido.
You actually went back to Australia as well. And but again, when in Australia, you joined Aikido. So again,
yes,
something was going on between you and Aikido. You trained with Graham Sensei for how long? For a couple of years, and then you moved back to Japan, and actually you started training in Hiroshi Tada Sensei's Gessoji dojo. So why did you actually choose Tada Sensei? And at the time, were you aware of his particular approach to Aikido and Budo?
So what happened was, in my first year of study, when I first joined Hombu, I was here on a working holiday visa. I went back to Australia because I realized I needed to go to university, get a degree to have some kind of future. So my first year back in Australia was my first year of study. That's when I started Aikido properly. The second year of my study, I came over here as an exchange student. And two coincidental things happened. The school was right near the dojo, Tada Sensei's Gessoji dojo, the university. It was a 5-minute bicycle ride. The second thing was the year before when I first joined Graham Sensei's dojo in Australia, there was a guy there who had trained in Japan for a year and he had trained at Tada Sensei's dojo. So he had told me about Tada Sensei, and then it just coincidentally happened that the school was right there. So I was like, well, I'm going to join. And I stayed with Tada Sensei for 5 years. I had numerous private conversations with the man, all in Japanese, and sometimes not having a clue what he was talking about, because, you know, not even regular Japanese folk can understand a lot of what he's talking about. He's very far out there sometimes, you know, with the universe and how everything's related. And I one day hope to be able to understand just a quarter of what he understands right now.
Can you comment on Tada Sensei's Kinorenma, his own internal power training program? What do you think? Was it beneficial to you?
Well, Tada Sensei now is, I think he's 92 years old.
Yeah, he'll be in December. Yeah.
And he still moves like a 30-year-old. He's amazing. And he puts it all down to his Kinorenma and his Suburi, right? So I went through the whole Kinorenma system, and I also did Zazen, which is seated meditation. And it's very cleansing for the soul. When you first start doing his stuff, you just you don't really know what you're doing. You're just making sounds. He makes the sounds of the Japanese alphabet, a, I, U, E, O. So he'll go, a, I. He goes right through the alphabet, and then he does half. So he'll go, a, I, U, E, O, and then he'll go, and stop halfway, and then he'll do one silently where you do the ah in your head, but in your head, and then he does all these kind of stuff. It's very, very. It makes you focus so much on your training, having this 20 minutes of time to yourself, to really get to know yourself. Unfortunately, I don't keep up the practice, and it's something that I really wish. When I go back to Australia and I open my dojo, which is hopefully not too far away, this is one of the things I will definitely be implementing in my training will be first the cardio system, but then also Kino Rema for sure.
So during your time at the Gessoji, you were caught between a rock and a hard place, basically. You were fascinated by Tada Sensei's charisma and teachings, but you were also missing the fighting element. You were, you know, your earlier days, emotion of competing and coming up on top, all of that. So you started cross-training, am I right? So you would juggle Tada Sensei's Aikido, kickboxing, some gym work to put on some muscle power, an impossible combination, one could say. How did you manage? How did that work?
Well, the thing was, in Australia, a lot of people, it's quite a country full of big muscular guys. Obviously not everybody, but a lot of guys in Australia hit the gym hard. So I always had this complex about being small and skinny when I was younger. And, you know, by the time I was 25, I was like, right, I need to do something about this. But another reason was that I always deep down, with all this martial arts training, I deep down always wanted to be a professional wrestler. And truth be told, the only reason that I joined the kickboxing is because I really, really wanted to do professional wrestling, but I was still very small at the time. And an American friend of mine who's, you know, since passed away, rest in peace, Eric, he said to me one day, dude, you want to be a pro wrestler? In Japan, MMA guys do pro wrestling guys do kickboxing guys do MMA. Everybody mixes everything. So why don't you come down to my kickboxing dojo? And you never know, it may lead to pro wrestling. So I was hitting the gym hard, still going to Tada Sensei's dojo 2 or 3 times a week, plus Hombu once on Saturdays. Then also doing kickboxing and hitting the gym. And if you want, we can get on to how kickboxing got me into pro wrestling. If I've answered your question.
In a minute, we'll get there.
Okay. Okay.
So you just mentioned that you actually entered the Aikikai Hombu Dojo second time.
Yes.
Again, you weren't having a lot of luck there, yeah, right?
Right. I bounced around.
Yeah.
Bounced around a lot of different classes, but what I felt was that it was all kind of like cookie cutter Aikido. I don't want to be rude to because the Shihan are all very, very brilliant in Hombu, but it was pretty much all the same. It was yeah, cookie cutter stuff. There was not a whole lot of. Tada Sensei had his own, you know, his own style. It was very much Tada Sensei. And so I was bouncing around the guys at Hombu. Couldn't really find anybody, but I really, really missed the kicking and the punching. And that was what I got out of kickboxing. Having that, you know, the kicking and the punching, and still not finding success in the Aikido world, you know, doing what I really, really wanted to do, which was something more martial than just, you know, kind of like the kata geko, which is like a kata in karate, right? The kata, the patterns, the practices. What we do in Aikido is kata geko. And I was really looking for someone who understood it's more than just the form, the practice. Taik, turn your mic off.
Hey, whoops. My bad. Hey, greetings. Whoops.
The cork man.
He just photobombed the Zoom.
So
mute. Put yourself on mute.
You had a chance encounter then with a specific Shihan while you were almost ready to give up Aikido for good, yeah? And that changed everything.
Right. I was down in Tanabe doing this. Really had it with Aikido, and I really was upset with a lot of the people doing Aikido as well. You know, there's a lot of like fake tough guys I was coming across on the mats, especially at Tanabe. Not so much fake tough guys in Japan, but a lot of the foreigners that you train with put on a bit of a bravado. I was having a bit of a problem with it, ready to give up. And then I came across Yokota Shihan, who really changed my life. When I saw it, I knew straight away, this guy is the real deal. This is the dude I need to go to and train and learn from if I am gonna be any good.
So you thought, this is my guy, yeah?
This is my guy straight away from the very first technique.
So as a result, you actually brought your training experience at the Gessoji to an end, and you started a new path in training. So what did you see in Yokota Sensei?
I quit Gessoji the very week after. Didn't even see out the month. And what I saw from Tada's, from Yokota Sensei was he understood it Aikido from a Budo aspect, right? Which is not just, if you understand it from an Aikido aspect, it's just the form, the katachi, as we say, the kata. But Yokota Sensei understood everything from, because he did karate and he did judo, and his weapons are amazing. So what he understood was that he knew where you could put on arm bars. He knew where you could throw side kicks. He was throwing front kicks. One of his earlier teachers was a guy called Kuroiwa, who was a former professional boxer, and would only, that one particular Japanese teacher would only relate Aikido to boxing strikes. That was a guy called Kuroiwa Sensei. So Yokota Sensei had this absolutely unique perspective coming up as doing karate, doing judo, going into Aikido full time, coming across a guy that was doing boxing techniques in his Aikido, and then becoming Uchideshi at Hombu Dojo and basically being Kishomaru Doshu's bodyguard. He understands the aspects of you have to be able to throw, you have to be able to strike, and you have to be able to relate it to weapons, the Aiki weapons. And it's very rare that you find someone who can really understand all three of them.
You changed dojo, changed teacher, changed training style, but again, something nagging at you, yeah? Something Aikido alone could not satisfy, you know, not even Yokota Sensei's Aikido alone. So this is when you go back to what you were mentioning earlier, your dream of building a career in pro wrestling actually became something that you addressed for real, once and for all. So what I would like to ask you, what did you drive you to wrestling? How crazy was that? You know, can you explain what you actually had to put yourself through to get to be a professional wrestler? Because I guarantee you, no one understands what you actually did. Because if you don't, you cannot understand. Please give us a little bit of an idea.
Okay, firstly, to be able to understand that, I need to explain how I was able to pick up Yokota Sensei's Aikido. And it will relate to the wrestling part in a second. But I needed to have a translator for Yokota Sensei's Aikido. And I don't mean linguistically. What I mean is, I had a senpai there, a senior, his name was DJ, and he would always say to me, oh, well, what he really means is this. And when he's showing this, then this also means this. So he was giving me like an on-the-fly lesson of Yokota Sensei's techniques. And it really, really made me understand the importance of, you know, senpai and kohai. And that's why you can see the kid there in the green shirt. I'm trying to pass it on to him, Taig, giving him the same lessons that I got. But knowing how important this whole, you know, because there was no give up with DJ. You weren't let off the hook for anything. You trained hard and you trained to the best of your ability. And I'd always wanted to be a wrestler. I had applied to a couple of schools. I'd never done any wrestling in Japan or outside of Japan before. And as a white guy in the wrestling industry in Tokyo, I'm the only one. If you're a foreigner here in Japan and you're wrestling, you've always done your training outside of Japan and then come over. And because of my language, because I can speak Japanese, I joined this dojo, this pro wrestling dojo. And I was immediately thrown in and treated like a Japanese young boy, they're called. And a Japanese young boy gets up at, early hours of the morning and cleans the toilets. And then we go to training. But the training, I thought I was getting when I wanted to be a pro wrestler, my idea of pro wrestling was, ooh, yeah, brother, like Hulk Hogan kind of stuff. But what I didn't understand is that Japanese pro wrestling was the forefather to Japanese MMA, right? So all the famous MMA guys that came out of Japan in the early 90s or late 80s all started in pro wrestling. And the training here in pro wrestling is very, very similar to MMA. So I was thinking I was going to get a 101 basic, school of wrestling American style. But what I ended up getting was combat wrestling, learning how to hurt somebody and then learning how to not hurt them so that you didn't actually hurt them when it comes time to perform. We went through thousands and thousands of squats, minimum 300 squats each time. They would do whatever they could to break you. I puked my guts up more times than I can imagine, like I remember. It was and forever will be the hardest training I ever did in my life. And I'm very thankful that I put myself through and I didn't quit and didn't give up, and was able to come out on top as a professional wrestler.
And so your hard work paid off eventually, and you had a successful stint in the pro wrestling circuit. There's plenty of videos to prove that. But another consequence was for about 3 years you gave up on Aikido and the Aikikai Hombu Dojo again.
Right.
What did wrestling give you compared to what Aikido was giving or not giving you?
Well, here's the thing. I went back to Hombu after 3 years because my senpai that I just talked about, DJ, decided he was going to leave and go back. And I thought, well, he's given me so much of his time. I better go back and give him some of my time. But I missed it. I missed it a little bit. I missed Sensei. I missed, DJ. And another one of my friends, Hussein, was there at the time. What it gave to me was a new sense of, when we grapple, because we practiced legit grappling. You have a guy in front of you, and he's not going to move the way you want him to move in grappling. You have to move. You have to react to what he's doing to be able to try and get a submission. And this opened up my Aikido so much because I already had the kicks. So when you know how to kick, you can place your distance. You know how far you have to throw a kick. You know how far you don't have to throw a kick. So, I would usually use my kicks from a distance, from a far away distance, leg shots, front kicks to the guts and whatnot. But what the wrestling and the grappling taught me was when it does become close, quartered, you have so many more options. And we call Aikido this all-encompassing Budo martial art. I'm not so sure at the moment that Aikido is, but I always call it that, but I'm not so sure. I would like to say it could be, in that we only really have a set of rules, but they're not super defined. Yes, we do Iri Minagi. Yes, we do Ikkyo. Yes, we do this and that, but it's the principles that all we really have to worry about: the irimi, the different sabaki. And so when you add more to your repertoire, when you know how to kick, when you know how to take people down, when you know how to throw on different submissions, your entire Aikido game just explodes. It just gets so much bigger. It's really hard to say, but you can only get this sensation from cross training. And it only really all fell into place for me like maybe 3 years ago, 4 at the most. Just one day realizing, you know what, I can put all this together and it really will work.
How useful was Aikido, your experience in Aikido for your wrestling training? The opposite idea. So was Aikido actually good? Could you use some of it? Not only at a technical point of view, or was it not useful at all?
Well, pro wrestling here in Japan, and it's different to the United States, but pro wrestling here in Japan, there were a lot of judo guys and sumo guys who were the original wrestlers here. So a lot of the Japanese training is old school judo training. And so even though the ukemi is slightly different, having the Aikido ukemi meant that I didn't need to start at 0. I could start at 30% and not 0. And I had to retrain my ukemi, but hitting the mat and break falling was not a new concept to me. In wrestling, you know, because you know, professional wrestling comes from catch wrestling, and in catch wrestling they have similar things to Nikkyo, and they also have similar things to Kotegaeshi, almost exactly the same actually. They have their own Kotegaeshi in catch wrestling and professional wrestling. So I was able to catch up on some of those things a lot faster than maybe others might have.
There's like a side topic that I would like to touch now is about the, how would you call it, the peer pressure from other martial artists in Tokyo. You know, there's what's wrong with them? You know, that they have this very bad idea of Aikido. They almost ridicule it, and basically they haven't even trained a day in it. So what's wrong? What's gone wrong there?
You get, you know, it takes all kinds to make a world. We know that. And we can't all be expert Aikido people. We can train to the best of our ability. But I think what has ruined it really is basically just social media. People will look at Aikido and they'll get shared, and they'll see absolute trash online, just some of the worst stuff ever, and they'll immediately associate that with, oh, that doesn't work. And they also see Embu, and we know that Embu is just a performance. It's no different to pro wrestling. You know, it's no different to a kata in karate. And they see that and they think, oh, well, you know, nobody's going to throw one of these hokey karate chops. No one's going to do that, you know. And also I think it comes down to the type of people that are attracted to Aikido. And it's a mixed bag. But you'll have a lot of people that are attracted to Aikido are not, you know, they're doing Aikido because they don't want to do kickboxing, or they don't want to do judo because they don't want to get punched in the head. And that's not for me to say, you know, you're wrong. Everyone does Aikido for a reason. I just think there's a lot of stuff going out there online today that should not be online. You know.
Yeah, well, that's the role with social media. It gives
it's not just Aikido.
Anyone to do anything, to say anything, to show anything without any restraint, and that's probably where the real problem is. That before actually filming myself doing X and Z, I should think about it, or maybe I should publish it with a little note explaining that I mean, you know, it's not. I'm not meaning that I'm a big Budo guy. on the other hand, though, I think that this is would be the honest answer, but a lot of people in Aikido actually don't realize that their training lacks in martiality. They're convinced to be effective. And so the problem is not with Aikido. Problem is with people, as usual. You cannot blame Christianity or Islam.
Right.
You have to blame the people that follow the ideas, not the idea in itself.
Right. Aikido has lost its martial edge. And I'm not sure if it's just, I think you can say this about a lot of things these days, but you know, things are not the same as what they used to be. Back in the day, I've heard stories in Hombu where, you know, people would grab each other by the hair, or there'd be blood and there'd be fights in the corner, and Kishimara Doshi would just look the other way and laugh. I think, you know, there's a whole risk of, you know, duty of care in dojos these days. And I think people are just too scared. You know, I can only speak from Hombu. I know for sure Hombu is definitely scared of any altercations and anything other than peace. But when you train in other martial arts, you quickly realize how easy it is to bring martial practicality into your Aikido, and how easy it is that if you haven't done other martial arts to understand that, you know, you don't really know proper martial arts if you've only really done Aikido. Because at the moment, unfortunately, it sucks to say, but it really is lacking in that martial edge that it needs, and definitely has. It's there.
Well, the justification often enough is that Aikido has a larger scope, that there are many other aspects in play, and it is true, very much so. But from studying with senior teachers, from reading, from personal experience, I understood that all these other aspects only come into play if you go through the first part of breaking your ego. So how do you actually break your ego? How do you realize how to harmonize your different parts, the good and the bad ones, if you never go through the bad ones? How do you control them? This is how do we control them today in Aikido if all we see is a peaceful environment where basically all the stuff that we don't like, we just deny?
Because our Aikido training is in a comfort zone, and we never get out of second gear. And if we do, it's only third gear. And the most humble people that I've ever met are people that, you know, most humble martial artists are the ones that understand that you're going to get punched in the head for real, or you're going to get tapped out if you know, if you do have some kind of ego. Because if you have an ego, there'll always be somebody better than you, no matter where you go. And you know, especially in when you're training on the tatami, we have this saying that, you know, the tatami never lies. It's a saying that I love to repeat. And you'll always come across that one guy who thinks he's really, really good until you take him down, until you tap him out. Or, you know, I'll never forget, I was training with this one guy who was a 6-dan once. And he said to me, I was taking ukemi for him, very first technique, and he said to me, "Oh, you're being nice to me. I'm not going to be so nice to you." I thought, what? What's this guy talking about? And then I do the technique to him and he stops me. Okay. I do it again and he tries to stop me again, and I take him to the ground. And he tries to wrestle me. And it was like taking candy from a baby. And he tapped out before I even got to put on a technique. Before I even got to touch him. He tapped straight away. And I was like, man, look, like we can play these games if you want, but you can't wrestle with a wrestler. Okay. You got to know your limits. Oh, yeah, but I just wanted to try. And I was like, well, you got your answer, didn't you?
Yeah, nice try.
Yeah, but you know what? I have a friend there in Hussein, and when we practice in the corner in Hombu, he's always trying to grab my legs for a takedown. He's always trying to do something, and but it's in a friendly atmosphere. It's in a friendly environment where we're just trying to find holes in each other's game, and it's very hard to train with someone if you don't have that kind of camaraderie, because ego does come into play. I don't want to lose to this guy. I don't want to be made to look like a fool. But when you have someone of an equal level who can try and find the holes in your game, it's quite fun and really worthwhile study wise.
Of course, yeah. Let's go back to your path in Aikido. So eventually your career in pro wrestling came to an end, and you went back to Aikido, as you were saying earlier. And
I actually, it still hasn't come to an end. It's just more of a semi-retirement.
Okay, so
I still wrestle. Maybe I went from wrestling 10 times a month to maybe 6 times a year now at the most.
Keeping the door open, basically.
Yeah, just getting the ring rust off.
Yeah. So you basically eventually went back to Aikido for the third time, we could say. What had changed in the meantime? Had Aikido changed, or was it you?
I had changed. But also what had changed was that I met a few younger kids. One of them is still here. He just turned his screen off. And I became a senpai for the first time, which I had never done before. And, you learn from teaching. And everything kind of started to fall into place for me when I became like a senpai that people relied on. I had to be Yokota Sensei's guy because DJ had left. I had to be that guy that, took care of Sensei, who, helped him with his take off his gi, in the summer, because he had a lot of injuries, help him with his, walking up the stairs when he got hurt and stuff like that, trying to make these younger kids understand what Sensei is trying to do. Hombu hadn't changed, but I definitely had. I had come back with 3-4 years of, I gave up for 4 years and came back with a whole new set of skills. So definitely I had changed and not the art.
I don't think it was only the skills. I think you changed. Well, obviously you matured in the meantime, as it happens to all of us with time. And the fact that you were, for the first time, looking for kohai to pass on what you learned, prove it clearly. And what would you like to pass on this kohai? What's your point there? Aside from the translation work that you were mentioning earlier, that is to be in between the Shihans and the junior students. From your own perspective, what is it that you like to pass them on?
What I try to do is it's not how to do it. It's why we do it. And anybody can learn a form, but how do we get there? Why are we doing this? It's for me, it's all about the why. Why are we doing this technique? Not how are we doing it? And to understand the why is you have to put yourself in different situations, close distance, longer distance, guys with different skill sets. This is the biggest thing that I want to try to drum into my core highs is, ask yourself why. Yokota Sensei always has he always has a plan A, B, C, D, E, F, all the way down to Z. If this doesn't work, this will work. And this is very similar to a BJJ method. BJJ is, and catch wrestling is is basically physical chess, especially catch wrestling. It's actually called physical chess, but there's a guy called John Danaher out of New York. He's actually a Kiwi, and he's a very famous BJJ sensei. And he's produced an incredible amount of world champion students, but he's never actually fully competed by himself. But his method is, if somebody does this, you do this. And then if he does that, then you do that. And then if he reacts like this, then you do that. And Yokota sensei was one of the very few who took that same approach for Aikido. Okay, so if he does this, then you have this, but you also have this. And if he doesn't go down, then try this. And it's very important to kind of be able to learn how to process all that on the fly. And we can only do this through training.
Yeah. Talking about methodology, it's there's a little bit of a discussion going around in the last while that maybe the way that Aikido, not only Aikido, but traditional Budo is taught might be not as good anymore because of the ways things have evolved in the meantime. So maybe there's too much, that's what it's been said anyways, too much, how would you say, the traditional element is too strong and innovation would be necessary to produce something that is more relevant to modern times. In other styles that they've done it, they got rid of the gis and stuff. But more than anything, don't you think that sometimes that the training, the teaching methods in Budo require too long to get you where you're supposed to go?
Okay, so let me
sorry, Rionne,
about...
obviously, sorry if I interrupt you. Obviously, we're talking about people that train for real, that train regularly. We're not talking about people that go there once or twice a week or when they remember. But basically, to go from A to B, when you're committed to training, there's a discussion that maybe the method in itself should be somehow renewed, revitalized.
I don't know if this is a thing about traditional martial arts because, well, first of all, in all martial arts, you need a good base. Okay. And judo here in Japan still teaches an excellent base. Karate here in Japan still teaches an excellent base. You have your fundamentals and then you kind of go up. You fail exams. If you're not good enough, you fail your test. I think Aikido is more of, here's an analogy we can probably relate to. In Japan, there are two kinds of places to lift weights. There's a sports club and there's a weightlifting gym. Okay, the sports club is for the not so serious people, the older people, the Sunday people. And the weightlifting club, Gold's Gym, Anytime Fitness kind of stuff, is for the serious weightlifters. I often wonder to myself if Aikido is the sports club of martial arts. And I always say that, you know, Aikido doesn't need to change, but the way of training needs to change. I can't understand why we can't spend 30 minutes, 20 minutes earlier doing a few squats, doing some push-ups. In my dojo in Australia, when I was young, we did push-ups all the time. We did push-ups like this to develop our wrists. You know, we did a lot of ukemi practice. And I just wonder if we're missing the fundamental basics and just going straight for the cherry on top, which is the techniques.
Well, you were earlier on, you were mentioning something about Tada Sensei that I think explains perfectly your point. Tada Sensei's Aikido, you said, was based on his internal power program and training, and you mentioned Suburi, meaning that the man, I heard him saying this many times. He was a legend for doing feats like thousands and thousands and cuts every day, every single day, with rain,
Yes.
rain or shine, or every day, etc., etc. So this is like the base you were talking about, or one of the bases to build a good physical training, way of training. Then you have the Kinorenma.
The cherry on top.
Yeah.
Is just the
So I
techniques.
think the problem is that a lot of our teachers, very respected teachers, by now are old or they're gone, and we only see them as at their peak or when they basically produced this later expressions of their training, and we basically skip all the parts where they were doing the squats and the suburi cuts, and they were actually going around fighting people, because I know plenty of stories of the Shihans that built the Aikikai. They basically went out to test what they were learning. It wasn't just a mental projection of their abilities. No, they went out and they went to see if they were what they were doing.
Yokota Sensei is famous for it.
Yeah, the stories, all the Japanese Shihans of the golden days. That brings me to another question. So you've been in and out of the Hombu for it's about 20 years, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
How did it change? How did it change along this time? And what is very good today about Hombu Dojo, the Hombu Dojo, and what you don't like about the Hombu Dojo?
Okay, that's a very good question. So as far as teaching wise, not a whole lot changed technique wise, because in Hombu they only ever did basics. It doesn't matter how high ranking a sensei you were, they very, very rarely got away from basics. But what changed, I think, and I really don't want to sound like I'm putting anybody down, but I think what changed was just basically the level of martial artists on the mat. These days, we get a lot more people doing it for fitness, for like the kind of sports club atmosphere. And compared to the older days where a lot of people really did it, because you have to remember, Aikido only really came to the forefront of, everybody's knowledge not that long ago. It's a very relatively new martial art.
It is, yeah,
it
is.
And remember that Aikido was, a lot of guys came over from judo, a lot of guys came over from kendo, a lot of guys came over from karate, and it was always more of a finishing art, whereas you went into Aikido to find that thing that you were missing. You'd got all your throws out of judo, you'd got your strikes out of karate, you'd got all your sword cuts and stuff out of kendo, but now you're looking for this thing that only Ueshiba and his art could provide. And I'm not sure Aikido took a lot of those things that they had already got and implemented into their own system. I'm not so sure that we have that. So the second half of your question was what is not so good about it now is that, unfortunately, like I'll grab my kohai after class and I'll try different techniques, stemi waza. I'll try different techniques going into takedowns. It's still all Aikido, and the look on people's eyes, I don't know if it's, I don't want to say envy, but I definitely am looked at in a not so good light. Oh, why is he doing that? And I feel really uncomfortable practicing, outside of the basic syllabus of Aikido, say after class.
Would you say that the syllabus, the way of training Aikido has crystallized over the last, 30, 40 years? The techniques are these, the catalog is these. It's like
Exactly
for definite. So anything that goes out of what's known, the mainstream Aikido, it's immediately rejected, and comparisons with immediately you get people judging you because you're violent, blah, 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 all this rubbish.
That is exactly how I feel. And it got to such a point where I don't bother after class. I just fold up my hakama and call it a night. But anything other than the basic syllabus is taboo.
Well, and that's okay. I suppose that's one of the Hombu Dojo as a main function, and it has to be accepted. And by the way, we're criticizing some of the aspects of training at the Hombu. That said, by almost everyone's admission, it is still one of probably the best place in the world where to go and train, because you can get many different shihans, maybe not so different from each other, it doesn't matter, to train under. You get tons of different training times that you can pick from. You can get people from different backgrounds, from different nationalities, different styles going there. So still, it's a great place to go to train.
I still think it's one of the best dojos in the world to do Aikido.
And I want to make it clear that what we're saying is not because we just sit here and open our mouth and just to throw stones at anyone. It's just that this is a positive criticism. And I think need a little bit, all of us, we wouldn't be saying the things that we've been saying so far, no?
Right. Mine is more of an overall view of the Aikido world and not a direct criticism of Hombu. Yep. I wouldn't be where I was without Hombu Dojo,
Oh, no. Well, we all love it, man. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about that. That's not this.
Exactly.
Now, going back to you, to your personal story, you're now building a reputation, we could say, for yourself by bringing awareness and applications from combat sports into an Aikido context. Do you feel, by doing this, do you feel you're continuing a tradition of adapting and incorporating that has been in Aikido since the very beginning?
Right. It was all taken out. And this stuff that I'm trying to do I didn't invent any of it. It's been around since the days of the ancient Greeks, since the days of the later on the days of the ancient, samurai. This is not new. There are only so many ways you can do certain techniques. But what I want to show is that you don't have to be an MMA fighter. You don't have to be, a kickboxing champion. But there are so many ways that you can, and if we know how to do Ikkyo, we know how to do Kimura, armbar. If we know how to do Kotegash, we know how to choke somebody. It's just not being taught. If we know how to do, Ushiro Waza, Kubishime, then we should know how to actually choke somebody from there. And I just want to kind of take it one step further and show people this is how you actually do it. And I think people want to learn. I just not sure there's a whole lot of people showing it. And it's just stuff I've been taught, it's not anything, as I said, I didn't create any of this. It's just stuff I've put in my tool bag over the 20 years I've been here.
Yeah.
And really anybody can do it.
No, but there's another thing. This shouldn't be a taboo, because Aikido was born by doing this, taking other stuff and adding other stuff and turning the whole thing into what we actually have today. So maybe one could say, Simone, Rionne, what you're doing is rubbish. You're trying to do A and B and it doesn't make any sense. Fine, I accept that. But it shouldn't be like, no, you cannot do this,
Right.
Aikido is A, B, C, D. That doesn't make any sense. We all know that Sensei actually didn't codify one thing about Aikido. Is said it in many numerous occasions that Aikido is open, is a living body.
Right.
So what's with these people?
Well, I think for one, what we're doing now is we're doing Kishomaru Doshu's Aikido. That's one thing we can be sure of. We're the Aikikai is doing the stuff that Kishomaru Doshu, who was fifth choice, if we're being honest, to be named Doshu. He was really down the list of people to take over from his father. Not to say he was a bad martial artist. That's not for me to say. I never met the man, but there was a guy that was married to Sensei's daughter who was a Kendo 8th Dan who was supposed to take over. There was Mochizuki Sensei who was it was doing judo who was supposed to take over. None of this happened. It's there should never be anybody saying you can't do that. That's rubbish.
Yeah, well, in relation to Kishomaru Doshu, we while we're criticizing, again, we need to recognize that without him and his efforts, we wouldn't be here talking about Aikido, because let's remember that his great father was great at Aikido and Budo, but was half a disaster in everything that had to do with organization and basically
Right.
was of his interest in any sort of way. So with thanks to Kishomaru, he's done whatever he could, and
He was a great man.
He's done wonders, because in the space of 20 years, he's got Aikido out of a dojo that had maybe 10 students and brought it all over the world, formed a generation of teachers and brought it all over the world. But we had to accept that he's done it the way he taught. Right. So that right. where we are today is because of that. And maybe we're all dreaming about what it came before Kishomaru Sensei, but we also
we're only looking at it from an Aikikai point of view. Right, we're only looking at it from an Aikikai point of view. You have to understand that a lot of people didn't like the way Kishomaru was taking it, and so they went and formed their own.
Yes,
Shiota Sensei didn't like it. Tomiki Sensei didn't like it, and they had their own ideas, and they went their own path. So yeah, we're looking at it from an Aikikai lens, but now he was definitely a great man, and the Hombu Dojo is the Hombu Dojo because of him.
Well, like it or not, Aikikai Aikido became mainstream, and that doesn't mean that it's the best, if that can be applied to Aikido. And unfortunately, due to human nature and business, all this family of Aikido in the world is actually quite dysfunctional. So you just mentioned other very extremely important currents within Aikido that unless you were born into them, you haven't a clue, or very little. With Aikido Italia Network, right. We've been trying to, bring, ours is an Aikikai based audience, more, 95%, but we've been trying to explain that there's other ways, that Aikikai Sensei is not only the bad guy that invented competitive Aikido, it's actually, he was actually one of the main Shihans of Ueshiba Sensei, and he had a great connection with Kano Sensei and brought forward his work. So it's a shame that our community is so divided, not
well, look, this is
so high, and it's so hard to climb them.
This is the thing about opening up your experiences to cross training, because I can see the good points to Aikikai, Yoshinkan, Tomiki, but I can see the bad points of Aikikai, Yoshinkan, and Tomiki, and the others. And if you pigeon-toe yourself into one little, you're in trouble. The minute that somebody really holds you and decides that they want to punch you, you know, your little narrow-minded Aikikai view is not going to get you out of that trouble.
Or
You-
any narrow-minded view, because as you know, I live in Ireland, and in both in Ireland and the UK, the Tomiki Aikido community is pretty strong, probably one of the strongest around. And
it is, yes.
the very same problems, the very same things, you know, they have their style, and if you try and talk to them, they're not interested, because they think, oh yeah, Aikikai, it's all rubbish, you know. And while both communities should just be open to each other. And so you were surprised that most Aikido don't want to try other new martial arts. How can you be when they don't even want to try other Aikido? You know?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. You're
Unbelievable.
100% right.
Yeah.
I actually think I'd like to try the Tomiki Randori, but what stops me from doing it is that there's so many rules that you have to stick to your little Aikido techniques, and I know that I'll just forget that I'm only allowed to do Aikido and probably do something stupid like a takedown or something.
I'm sure you get disqualified right away for trying.
Yeah.
Okay. Change of subject. I had a good look at your media channels, and among other things, I noticed that you offer an image of yourself that is often focused on your body. And how important for you is today the idea of physical power?
Okay, well, look, when I was coming up in Tada Sensei's dojo, there was an Italian guy, because obviously in his dojo there are a lot of Italian guys there, and they all seem to be called Stefano, by the way. Every Italian guy I've ever met, you're the first Italian guy I've met who's not called Stefano. I'm joking, but there was 3 Stefanos in this dojo, and one of the Stefanos said to me, "Oh my God, you're going to the gym? What are you doing? It's going to ruin your Aikido." And this was echoed by the Japanese people. "Oh my God, you're going to the gym? What are you doing? You're going to get muscles, and your muscles are going to ruin your soft Aikido." And I can tell you now, you know, having strength is something that is so vital. Because when I was in Aikido, I was a skinny little kid and I had the speed, but now I put on the strength and I still got the speed. But now I got some strength. And at the end of the day, if someone's got your here and your techniques aren't working, well, I think my strength is pretty good. I think I might be able to do, you know, you cannot underestimate the importance of having strength. You don't have to go out and be a macho man, but you know,
it's actually unbelievable that you have to like justify yourself for trying to become stronger. You know, why would you have? What would you do? Try and become weaker? I don't get it.
I couldn't. I couldn't get it. I couldn't get it. Like, why are these people having to go at me for hitting the gym?
Well, I have a kind of an idea to get stronger. You need to work. Most people,
yeah, it's hard work.
And when they see someone making the effort, they prefer to say, "Oh no, this is not necessary." You know, to be.
Yeah.
You know, it's enough. You know, you do your 2 minutes of breathing technique, and that's it. And you control the key of the universe. What a massive vision!
Yep. Yep. Yeah, you must put in the hard work off the tatami to reap the benefits on the tatami.
It sounds like very basic stuff, but we actually seem to have lost it.
Yep.
Okay, one final question. Where do you want to bring your Aikido in the future? Where do you see yourself in, let's say, 10 years' time?
I think I will be teaching back in Australia, most likely in 10 years. Well, you know, hopefully within the next few years. I would like to bring the Aikikai Hombu Dojo techniques back to Australia, but my students will all have great cardio. They'll all be able to do a push-up. They'll all be able to do a sit-up. They'll all be able to do squats. Obviously to the best of your ability. And I think just in general, the mindset that we're doing a martial art, I think all my students will have it. I hope. That's how I plan to teach anyway. Because at the end of the day, they want to see, okay, well, you know, like I said, Yokota Sensei stuff was like, oh, you know, the DJ would tell me, oh, what he really means is this. So when he's doing this, he also means this is the oyo, this is the practical version of it. And I think it's very important to be able to show people, well, we do irimi because basically I don't really want to do irimi nage. I want to do irimi so I can take his back. And whatever happens then, whatever happens, it happens. I don't even want to think about it. I just want to know I can take his back. The irimi nage is the nice Aikido that we do, you know, for the dojo training. And I think it's more just the mindset that I want to have people know.
Yep. I think there are some people would like to ask questions. Raise your hand. Zoom has this function, so raise your hand and I'll put you. Okay, Pasquale, hold on a second, Pasquale.
Maybe I would like to know from you how you implement whatever you study. I suppose and I assume that it enters into your Aikido personal view. So how do you implement in technical terms all that you learn into your Aikido in order to be teachable, if I can say so, to your students?
One day the penny just dropped. The penny dropped, and one day I couldn't relate everything I'd learned. And by the way, I'm still so far away from where I want to be and how much I want to learn. So far away. But one day the penny just dropped, and it had just been from exposing myself to so many different kinds of techniques and so many different kinds of people. And then when I found myself in Aikido situations, I was like, wait, I've been in the same spot, but I've been there in wrestling. I've been there in kickboxing. I've been here before, but I didn't do Aikido that time. Now I'm okay. And I think it just comes from repetitious training. And I think it has to be a natural progression. One day the penny will just drop for everybody who does it. But the penny won't drop unless you expose yourself to different kinds of martial arts. Obviously for yourself, you told me about your background. I think the pennies drop for you and you're able to also understand, you know, where you can put things. But I think it has to be natural.
Well,
okay.
I think many other martial arts. I've done bits and pieces in Kenjutsu and Aikido most of my life. I did some judo when I was young, but I have the same mindset anyways. I think it's cultural. It's not only the experience that you're having around your Aikido that counts. I think it's actually the way you are. Some are just, they don't want to know. They're comfort. Right. You spoke about their comfort zone. Actually, the comfort zone of Aikido as a whole that at the moment.
When I train in grappling or kickboxing, I'm never comfortable because I know I might get kicked in the head, or this guy might tap me out. You know, I need to really be like, you know, like, oh, I better, you know, I'm so out of my comfort zone, and I think that's I don't know how we can fix that in Aikido. It's something I have to think about deeply.
Well, I think it's quite hard now because I'm a little older and I studied my initial years were with the Shihans that everyone knows. My main teacher was, Fujimoto Sensei primarily and Hosokawa Sensei. And they were of the generation that was still in Budo. They had Budo mindset. And this is what they passed on to us. Not everyone actually took it because we're all different. So for me, Budo is something that I use for my own, it's a path of, improving myself. How can I improve myself if I don't test myself? This is
Exactly.
that everyone should ask. How
Exactly.
today, or tonight, like most people I trained, did I get challenged in any way? I don't mean this, it doesn't have to be a sparring or competition or not, or it can be even within the very normal standard Aikido lines. Have I been challenged today? This should be the question that people should ask. And once it can happen. It's a class that went differently. But when you have the same answer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, you either change dojo or I don't know, there's something wrong there.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. More questions, people?
Sorry, I just, did I answer your question there, Pasquale?
Okay. Adrian.
Hello, thank you very much for today. It was really good.
Thank you. Thank you for being. I saw you right at the beginning. So
Many points to think of. Thank you for that. So obviously, will be some reflection after this. First question is why I can't find you on Facebook.
okay, well, I just came back to Facebook like 2 hours ago so that I could share this link. And the reason is because I was on Facebook for so long, and you have all these mainstream Aikido groups. And this was the first thing that started getting to me, was all the fighting that was going on in these groups. Like people were posting videos in these groups and then they were bashing each other out. And for a very small period of time, I got caught up in it, and I thought, what am I doing? This is not me. I'm not, and I ended up quitting the groups. But then what I found out was that these catch wrestling and BJJ groups were doing the same thing. And then what happened was I found out, like, I really kind of realized how toxic social media is. And then the social dilemma on Netflix got to me. I just decided, it's time to take a break from social media. But I came back today specifically to share this link, but I'll probably go off again.
I think you raised some issues that, we all getting a bit funny about, like, okay, I'm Aikikai, I'm getting offended if anyone talks about Aikikai in not great terms. To be honest, all this year I've been, I'm Aikikai as well, say that, but I've been training with, I took on classes with other styles, and yes, everybody tries to protect their own lineage, they protect their own style. But yeah, I think it's good to say that there is a distinction between the admin role and the level of skill as a teacher. As you said, Kishimaru, yeah, he has the merits to actually give us the curricula in Aikikai. We have Hombu keeping the lines as a center line, and is the basics. And that's the place where you go to do the basics, and you can't go and do anything else because there's the basic and has to be like that. Although right. Shihans there, they do a bit different than the basic line. They are, I think, Hombu is closing their eyes a bit to what the variations, yeah. But then, I've been to Yoshinkan, and they are not happy with their dojo, Hombu Dojo, because they have an email every 2 or 3 months, for instance. So we say in Aikikai, we are happy that the Shihans are coming over to Europe or wherever, or used to, but it's Corona now. So we are proud of our Hombu, and we're thinking, we look from outside and think Yoshinkan is doing really well, but actually not. But then there are other aspects they do well and we don't. In Aikikai. Right. So I think it will be a controversy here always, who is better, or, but even in Aikikai, you go and you train with people in Takemusu, for instance, Iwama, and they say, oh, we've never seen this. We don't know.
Oh, I can tell you now, Iwama people hate Aikikai.
Yes, but they are together in a way because they came back.
I don't understand it.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Even in Aikikai, you see this, and to be honest, I mean, people who are training in, they will be honest with you. They will tell you, okay, I train with the Shihan in Iwama, and he said, I never seen this. Show me. you know, and they said, show me your weapon thing, you know, which was, is that open mind, you know, thing. So I thought, you know, he never seen or did, I can't remember the technique, but, you know, I was surprised, but actually it's true. Is that specialism? You either go specialist in something and dig and dig and dig and, you know, do that to the sort of perfection level, or you go all over and you might waste yourself because you do too many things. So there's the tension, I feel like I've seen it. And then, sorry, I want to give you a short. Yes, Aikikai has the pyramidal system, you know, it's a family thing, it's traditional. So that's probably the chance for Aikido in a way to survive, because it goes there as the other split, and then possibly in time they will die, I think, quicker than Aikikai, because we have now the fourth, and then we already know the great-great-grandchildren coming into it, they train, and that they will preserve, I think, Aikido as a whole in Aikikai. I like to think that that's going to happen, that it's going to be, yeah, the preserve.
I think we're lucky that, well, the Ueshiba family are certainly very lucky that Kishimaru Sensei did what he did and kept it all in that lineage. I think that gives us, it's kind of like the Queen of England and the royal family. There can only be one royal family.
Yeah.
Right. And,
As
you know,
for
Prince Harry can duck out if he wants, but you know, at the end of the day, the royals are the royals.
Yeah. As for the gym going to gym and cross training, I think they are good, but I think it's good for when you're at a certain level. If you go to gym when you're doing Aikido, you get toughened and you're not going to be flexible. You know, you think you're in the gym when you're in the dojo. You get confused. You get tougher and muscular, and you'll try to. If you're at or cross training again, if you do cross training, if you go do all this stuff, you might end up into, you know, you're in the dojo doing Aikido, but actually start to kick and, you know, you get confused, I think.
Can I just say, I think it's all about the penny dropping. I think most people will go out and do the other art, and they're not able to bring it back to Aikido. They're not able to do it. And then one day it'll just drop like that. And then you'll be like, wow, holy shit, I can do that. And so I don't really know that that's such a massive problem. And I really think people that do Aikido are generally all pretty decent people and are not going to go out and try and kick somebody's head off while they're on the tatami. Maybe just, you know, while they have, you know, their kohai or their friend with them, they can try it out. Like, you know I've kicked a few of my kohai before, but it's all in love.
That's how I like. You can kill with Aikido smiling. And that's why it's hidden there. You just take it a bit further. So you have the basic, but if you go a bit further, you actually see what is the destructive or you know, what how you can kill actually with it, but you choose not to go that far, I think. And that's the beauty of it, but it's not shown.
Right. That's true.
But if I can intervene, I think related to building physical power, muscular power, again, it's a matter of choice, should be a matter of choice, in the sense that I can decide to drive a 500 or I can decide to drive a BMW. The speed depends on the actual car. So to me, it's better to drive a BMW at 60 or 50 miles an hour than a 500. I don't know if I explained myself.
I understand.
The fact that one does a lot of physical training doesn't imply that then that physical power is used in the wrong way. That's up to the individual. The individual, if the individual is silly, of course, he'll do Aikido in a silly way. But I think it's out of question that all athletes have an extremely well-developed body, and none of them is stiff. Try and tell that to Cristiano Ronaldo. You know, Cristiano Ronaldo's body is extremely similar to Bruce Lee. Okay.
In my case,
He moves in a very, very natural way. He's extremely coordinated. His physical power doesn't impede him in any sort of way.
Right. In my case, I really didn't have much of a choice. I was getting into the ring in basically my underpants. Right? I had to be basically, you know, I had like basically naked. Now, what kind of body do I want to show people, right? Am I an athlete who is proud to take his shirt off in the ring, or am I someone who's not? And for one, you know, the wrestling training here in Japan was 3 hours long. It was from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. We'd go and we'd have our lunch together with the wrestlers, maybe a nap or go play video games or whatever. But then we'd always have to hit the gym at nighttime. That was like part of the daily routine. There was no, you couldn't get out of it. You trained and then you hit the gym because that was your job. Like I was a full-time professional wrestler and I paid a monthly salary to wrestle. So the company had expectations and I had to meet them, which was, you know, I had to look the part. So yeah, I mean, strictly as from a private personal point of view, I never felt ever that weightlifting and muscles has hindered anything I've ever done in anything, except for maybe the odd soreness every now and then. But hitting the gym, I've never felt a hindrance. I've never felt that it's been a problem ever in my life.
Don't get me wrong, sorry, I'm doing gym. I've done it for 10 years now. Because of Corona, I still do, but okay, what I'm doing now, all the martial arts, that's in the past. But I'm saying is that on the mat, when someone comes as is bulky and is new, is a beginner, it tends to be
Yeah.
the Nova. So
yeah.
It's okay. I think it's great. As Simone said, you know, we need to build a strong body, a flexible body and all that. And probably many Aikido people, they don't. And we feel like if you use the energy of others, we can be lazy, you know?
Right.
Actually,
No, you're 100% right.
have to have a foundation, good sort of strong base, like lower body strong, yeah, legs and over. You have to be strong there and to be soft here on the upper body. But
Yep.
people get confused about that as well.
No, you're right. You're right. There's nothing worse than, but I do like to train with the stiff, raw beginners because you know the guys that don't know how to move. Because I get a sense of like
natural.
I think Aikido Kemi we're all kind of pre-programmed how to move, and then when you get a guy who's stiff and doesn't know how to take Ukemi properly, you kind of get that what's that like the unnatural reaction, and that's cool to see too. But no, you're definitely right. I mean, you know, someone who's stiff and big and just starting out, he's not going to be, you know, as flexible or as strong or as fast as someone who's not, you know.
Okay, I think we've come to the end. Rionne, thanks a lot for the chat. I really enjoyed it, and I look forward to training with you at some stage. We'll see.
Yes, actually,
we'll make plans.
My senpai DJ's told me that he's actually taken Ukemi for you before.
Where?
Do you remember him?
No, I don't.
I think it was his name is DJ Lorty. You asked him to take Ukemi for, I believe it was an Embu in Japan.
All right.
Because he's never been to Italy.
World. It's a very small world. Yes. Anyway,
yes. Do you remember him?
I do now. I think I got the picture. Yeah, the Budokan. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I want to train with you as well, but no funny business. By now, I'm an older guy. You need to take it easy on me.
Okay. Yes. No, we all train just, you know, to enjoy ourselves. So
that's that at the end of the day, that's it. You know, it has to be enjoyable, and we all need to go back to our work, our families, but that's it. It's nice to. When you do something, it's nice to do it to your maximum, not to go on controlled speed.
Right.
Rionne, talk to you soon again.
Yes, thanks everybody.
Thanks a lot for being with us. Thanks to everyone that got connected. I will have this also transcripted, so you'll be able to read the interview, to watch the video on our blog. a couple
For
of,
those that want to find me on Facebook before I get off again, it's under Rionne Fujiwara.
well, if you need to get in touch with Rionne after that, drop me a line and I'll pass on the message.
I'll just put it in. I'll put the link in the chat. No, hang on.
That's it.
There you go.
Thank you. Before going, I would like to remind you that next Sunday, that's the 7th, we're going to meet again here on Zoom. It's going to be our 4th session of the Aiki Healings. We're going to talk with Elis Amdur. Elis is a leading player in the international Budo scene, so it doesn't really require any introduction. It's going possibly to be a very interesting meeting. I'm gonna have help from Daniele Petrella and Carlo Cocorullo, that are senior teachers of the Italian Aikikai. The meeting will start this time at 9 p.m. English time. So Pasquale, don't get it wrong. Okay, it's time to say arrivederci. Arrivederci to everybody.
Arrivederci.
One very last thing, I have to say it every time. I would like to remind you that to put together all the work that we do for Aikido Italia Network, it takes a lot of time, and not only time, often enough is money. So please give us a donation. How do you do that? Go to the website, and on the homepage, there's a donate link. Also, all our articles have a donate button. Please click and keep this going, okay? Thank you very much. See you soon again. Thanks, Rionne.
Thank you.
Bye, bye-bye.